Hey there, little adventurers. Today we're going on a chilly, splashy adventure with Bear. Get ready to embark on a journey filled with unexpected twists and turns, where friendship and perseverance lead to heartwarming moments. So, gather around, snuggle up, and let's dive into this frosty tale together. Our story is called The Very Hungry Bear, written and illustrated by the talented Nick Bland. This book is a delightful blend of humor, adventure, and beautiful illustrations that bring the characters to life. Are you ready? Grab your fishing rod and let's dive in. Bear was hungry. Not just a little hungry, but very, very hungry. His tummy rumbled and grumbled, echoing through the forest. He knew he needed to find something to eat, and fast. He tried to fish, but he only caught a boot and a hat and some old fishing line. Each time he cast his line, he hoped for a big, juicy fish, but all he got were these useless items. Bear's frustration grew with each failed attempt, but he didn't give up. "Oh, Bear, you can't eat a boot." He looked at the boot in his paw and sighed. His stomach growled louder, reminding him that he needed to find food soon. But Bear was determined. He knew there had to be a better spot to fish. So he paddled to a new spot, where the river ran deep and fast. The water sparkled under the sun, and Bear felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this would be the place where he'd finally catch a fish. But he still couldn't catch a fish. The river was teeming with life, but no fish seemed interested in Bear's bait. He tried different techniques, different spots, but nothing worked. Bear's hope began to wane, but he wasn't ready to give up just yet. Just as Bear was about to give up, he saw a fish. A big, shiny silverfish flopping and slapping on the riverbank. But it wasn't alone. Bear's eyes widened with excitement. Finally, a fish. But then he noticed something unusual. There, tangled up with the fish, was a very cold, very wet polar bear. The polar bear looked out of place, shivering and struggling to free itself from the fish. Bear was surprised and curious. What was a polar bear doing here? A polar bear in Bear's river? Bear couldn't believe his eyes. He had never seen a polar bear in these parts before. The polar bear looked up at Bear with pleading eyes, clearly in need of help. "Help!" cried the polar bear. "I'm stuck!" The polar bear's voice was filled with desperation. Bear knew he had to do something. He couldn't just leave the polar bear in such a predicament. "Don't worry," said Bear. "I'll help you." Bear's heart was filled with determination. He reached out to the polar bear, ready to lend a helping paw. He knew that helping others was the right thing to do, even if it meant delaying his own meal. And he grabbed the polar bear by the paws and pulled. Bear used all his strength, pulling with all his might. The polar bear held on tight, hoping that Bear's efforts would free him from the tangled mess, and pulled and pulled. Bear's muscles strained, and he grunted with effort. The polar bear encouraged him, cheering him on. Together, they worked as a team, determined to overcome the challenge. With a great splash, the fish and the polar bear tumbled into Bear's boat. Water splashed everywhere, drenching both bears. But they didn't mind. They were just relieved that the polar bear was finally free. The polar bear shook off the water and shivered. He was still cold and wet, but at least he was no longer stuck. Bear looked at him with concern, knowing that the polar bear needed warmth and comfort. "Brrr," said Bear. "You must be cold." Bear could see the polar bear shivering, his fur soaked and his body trembling. He wanted to help his new friend feel better. "I am," said the polar bear, "and I'm lost too." The polar bear's voice was filled with sadness. He explained that he had been separated from his home and didn't know how to get back. Bear listened intently, feeling a deep sense of empathy. "Maybe I can help," said Bear. Bear's heart swelled with compassion. He knew he had to do something to help the polar bear find his way home. He couldn't bear the thought of leaving his new friend lost and alone, and he paddled and paddled and paddled. Bear's arms grew tired, but he didn't stop. He was determined to help the polar bear find his way back to his icy home. The journey was long, but Bear's determination kept him going. They passed craggy rocks and tall trees until they found a place where the polar bear felt at home. The landscape changed as they paddled, becoming colder and more rugged. Bear could see the relief in the polar bear's eyes as they got closer to his home. It was cold and white and icy. The air was crisp and the ground was covered in a blanket of snow. Bear shivered, but he knew this was the perfect place for the polar bear. Perfect for a polar bear. The polar bear's eyes lit up with joy. He was finally home. Bear felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing he had helped his friend find his way back. "Thank you," said the polar bear. "Would you like a fish?" The polar bear's gratitude was evident. He wanted to share his food with Bear as a token of appreciation. Bear's stomach growled in response, reminding him of his own hunger. "Yes, please," said Bear. He was very, very hungry. Bear's eyes sparkled with delight as he accepted the fish. He couldn't wait to sink his teeth into the delicious meal, and together they shared a delicious feast of fish, because sharing makes the best adventures even better. The two bears enjoyed their meal, laughing and talking about their adventure. Bear realized that the journey had been worth it, not just for the food, but for the friendship they had formed. Wasn't that a heartwarming story? Bear learned that helping a friend can bring you something even better than food: friendship. The bond between Bear and the polar bear was strong, and they knew they would always be there for each other. Thanks for fishing with me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for another Storytime adventure. Bye-bye, brave explorers. Remember, every adventure is better when shared with friends. Until next time, keep exploring and keep helping others. Don't forget to subscribe.